Welcome back to the Golf Mom Mindset Podcast. I created this space to support, inspire, and empower junior golf families navigating this beautiful journey. Today's episode is one you absolutely will not want to miss. We're diving beyond golf and into the bigger world of youth sports, sponsorships, parenting, mindset, and creating opportunities for young athletes with an incredible sports mom and entrepreneur, Mandy Holmes. While Mandy comes from the pickleball world, the conversation today applies for all sports families. From tournaments and traveling to branding, confidence, and securing sponsorship for junior athletes, Mandy is sharing how parents can help open doors for their kids without needing them to be the number one ranked athlete in their sport. With a background in storytelling and brand strategy, Mandy has helped turn the overwhelming world of youth sports into a clear, actionable roadmap for families who want to think bigger and create real opportunities for their kid. If you're a sports parent trying to navigate this journey while also supporting your child's dreams, this episode is for you. Make sure to follow Golf Mom Mindset on Instagram for daily encouragement, your golf parenting content, and podcast updates. This episode is proudly sponsored by Shipsticks. Whether you're traveling for a tournament or your next golf getaway, Shipsticks makes it easy to ship your golf clubs ahead of time and travel stress-free. Save 20% with code GMM20. Thanks to Shipsticks for supporting the Golf Mom Mindset podcast community and junior golf development. The link will be below in the bio. Now, let's dive in to the conversation today with Mandy Holmes and sponsorships for your junior athletes. I am so happy that you are here and really excited to dive into what's a really interesting topic and really your specialty. And while I mentioned in your intro that you're not in the golf world, you're in the pickleball world with your son, we found there's a lot of parallels in terms of just being a sports parent. Pickleball, very much like golf, is an individual sport. And you were riding this journey of trying to help your junior athlete to be the best that they can be, which is so fascinating. And I can't wait to talk all about this and sponsorships and how you're securing brand deals for your kiddo. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to get the conversation going.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited for not only our golf community to hear, but other sports parents, because I feel like this will be such a important episode. With what you're doing is such a unique thing. So diving right in, I'd love to ask, about your journey as a sports mom and what's led you to kind of pursuing athletic sponsorships for your junior athlete in the world of pickleball.
Yeah, so at one point, I have an 11-year-old, and at one point, he was playing three sports. He was playing basketball, flag football, and pickleball. And so, as you can imagine, the costs, the chaos, the travel, the registration fees, the tournament fees, the uniforms, the gear, all that stuff started adding up like crazy. And so I just thought to myself, there's got to be a way to offset these costs and still make youth sports sustainable and give him all the opportunities. And so, I have a background in owning magazines. And so I spent all day talking to businesses and positioning their brand in a way that they would get visibility. And so I just took that experience and switched it to positioning my kiddo to collaborate with local brands and businesses to give them visibility. And I got him sponsored. So he gets his gear for free. He gets his travel paid for. It's such an amazing partnership. And I feel like sports parents just don't know it's possible. So I spent 2 years figuring out exactly how to ask, who to ask, what words to use, how to position our family as a good partner. And then I put it into a 60-minute course. And now I teach all sports parents across any sport, any ages, any skill level, how they can get their kiddos sponsored to offset these crazy rising costs of youth sports.
I love that. And honestly, I cannot wait for your course to launch because I'll be one of your first customers. It's just so fascinating. And I feel like with your background, you had that natural ability to network and comfortability of approaching brands and stuff where I feel a lot of parents might not even know how to do this. So, how did you know which companies might even have a budget to be able to do this? Or do you just go in by asking them what their budget is? Or do you kind of propose, here's exactly what I'm looking for?
Yeah, there's a lot of work on the back end to position yourself in a really good spot to get a yes. And a lot of that includes building a brand for your kiddo so they have some visibility, whether it's on Instagram or if you don't want your kid to have social media, maybe they have a shirt that you can put logos on. And before you approach that business, you've created that brand. You are deciding which businesses make sense for your family. I always tell people start where you're already spending money. Go to the realtor that sold you your house. Who are you using for your insurance coverage? Who's your barber? Who is your dentist? The people that you're constantly seeing over and over again and spending money with, those are your easiest asks. So I always
Absolutely.
tell people like, create a list of 10 businesses you're already working with in some capacity and you have a relationship with. That's the best place to start.
I love that, and that
Yeah,
makes it definitely less intimidating, I think. Right.
totally. Yep.
For some of, the parents out there who, again, this is like they have no idea how to even begin with this. When it comes to creating the package of, I guess, your child, do you recommend them having Instagram pages, dedicated to their sports that are obviously, managed by the parents? Do you recommend that and see that being helpful with, locking in brands?
Brands now are so savvy that they are not looking at number of followers. They're so much more concerned about, is this a good representation of our brand? Do they have a positive family image? Are they showing up consistently? That's more important than thousands and thousands of followers now, especially when you're talking like a local level. Your barber doesn't care if you have 100,000 followers, but
Right.
if you have 500 really good ones that live in the community that all could use their services and they're engaging with you on social media, that's so much more appealing to a brand. So I always say, yeah, start with Instagram. It's visual, it's easy, parents can manage it. There's tons of ways to bring visibility to local businesses and connect with them that way before you start the outreach. So you already have an established relationship digitally.
Right.
So Instagram is for sure the way to go, but you always have to remember to put parent managed account
Mhm.
in the bio. I've seen so many times people get their kids' Instagram shut down because it doesn't say parent managed.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Is that just because they're getting, more strict with, obviously kids online and everything?
Yeah. Yeah. So it has to say like mom or dad managed or parent run account, or
Okay.
Instagram could flag you. So that's
Good to
step one.
know. This is very helpful info because, as you know, probably in the pickleball world with golf, it's an individual sport. So many kids have accounts because they're not part of a team sport. They are the brand, right? And I feel like a lot of parents out there, this would be very helpful information because many of them don't have, the momager, right? But that's a very important role. It
It
really
really
is.
is. And even sometimes the parents have a great reach on their own personal Instagram, and people forget about that. Maybe mom is a realtor, maybe dad has some type of business where he has an extensive network. Use all those connections too
Sure.
when you're pitching what kind of visibility you can provide.
Absolutely amazing. Well, walk me through with your son when, let's say, you approach a store that sells a product. Are you asking them to either sponsor and pay for, tournament fees, give you the product? Are you suggesting that their logo is going to be, on your son's shirt, or is it a combination of everything? And again, which which company you're approaching and where their goals might fit?
Yeah, everybody's individual. So, if he's using a pickleball paddle that he's loving or a baseball bat that he's loving and it's an organic partnership, then I reach out to them. And it's a really easy ask when you say, my kid already loves your baseball bat or your pickleball paddle. Would you like to do some type of collaboration? Here's what we can offer you. In exchange, would you please provide him with, and that's when you ask. So, in that case, it's like, will you provide pickleball paddles for the year or 10 baseball bats per season? And it's super fun because sometimes they're like, yeah, we'll give you a couple extras and you can do a giveaway. I've seen kids go to tournaments and they have been sponsored by a company and they'll hide like some product around the tournament and they'll say, I've hidden two pickleball paddles at this tournament. Whoever finds them, they're yours. And that's such a fun, way to get a brand, some new followers, to get people invested in a brand you're already loving and partnering with. So
Absolutely.
there's so many like creative ways
Mhm.
when it's a gear
Yeah.
partnership. If it's straight up cash, it's a little bit harder. And I always want to be super transparent. And asking for cash works best if you can have a face to face meeting. So if you can get that meeting with the golf course that you're practicing at, get a meeting with their marketing person or with the manager or with the CEO and face to face show them here's what we plan to spend this year on our golf journey, on our pickleball journey, whatever it is. And here is the cost. And it would really help us if you could pay for X amount of dollars. And if that's too much, we have, this other option. Maybe it's just a tournament fee. Maybe it's a flight to this tournament. But I find asking for cash, do it in person and break it down into 2 or 3 options for a brand and meet with the decision maker. Those are kind of the 3 pieces that you need when asking for straight up cash.
It's so enlightening because, I'm sure parents have sent, the blanketed emails that just go into space with no response. But to your point, if you're already establishing a relationship because it's your local business or whatever it is that you're taking your kid to already, and then you lock in a meeting with the decision maker and you're showing, here's how much we're already going to spend anyway, even if they sponsor a portion of it, I mean, then it cuts into your costs and then they're getting the visibility and the marketing which ends up probably costing I mean, their ROI is probably even better than what they would have paid had they done a traditional marketing route.
Exactly. And I always say it's a great opportunity to teach your kids business lessons.
Yeah,
I tell my little guy, treat this as your first job.
love
And,
that.
he has to file taxes now,
That's
at 11
amazing.
years old. But there's so many opportunities to teach your kids as you do these asks, you're going to be told no, and that's okay too. They need to hear no, and they're going to hear no more than they hear yes,
Right.
probably. But that's such a life lesson that they're learning through this process. And then when you do get a yes, it's so exciting.
Definitely. How it sounds like your son and remind me of your son's name.
Jay Z, not after
Z.
the rapper, it stands for John Zachary.
I love it. Well, with Jay-Z, it sounds like he's pretty involved in the process with you. So how involved would you say he is in terms of like, is he helping? Is he next to you when you're sending the emails? Is he going to some of these meetings with you? And how involved is he with the whole process?
Yeah, I try and involve him as much as possible. We even collaborate on meals before tournaments. And, I'll ask him, hey, what restaurants are you loving? And we'll reach out to them and maybe they'll give him a gift certificate or do a giveaway or have him in for a dinner before his big tournament. So he's driving the direction of who we're asking. And of course, we're only reaching out to partnerships for gear that he's loving.
Sure.
So he's involved in every step of the way. I'm sending the emails, of course. I'm doing all the grown up, behind the
Yeah.
scenes
Uh-huh.
work, but I truly get his opinion on everything. We collaborate on all of his social media posts. I say, are you good with this video being posted? Do you like this music for this reel? He is in charge of his own brand, but we
Love
make it
that.
very much a collaborative family decision.
What a great experience you're giving him at such a young age. And like you said, he's taking a crash course in marketing and business school
Yeah.
at such a young age before he's even in high school.
Yes. Yep.
What would you say is the turning point for you that made it clear that you would not only take what you're doing with your son, but actually turn it into a business to help other families?
It was about a year ago, and we went to a tournament out of state, and all the parents were complaining about how expensive it was to get there. And I just said, you know what, guys, there's another way you can offset these costs. And they all looked at me like I was insane. They were like, what do you mean you can ask businesses for money? And I was like, yes. And I figured out how to do it. That's why I always say I'm just a sports mom that figured it out. And so now it's like I have it down to a science of, the key phrases you really need to mention to position yourself as a partnership. You're not asking for donations. This is not a fundraiser. It's not a GoFundMe. It's not a get rich quick. It's truly a partnership, and I think that mindset, when I made that switch and started asking in that way, that's like, "Hey, our family would be a great partner for your business, and here's why." That is what really was the turning point that businesses were like, "Wow, this is a new way of marketing we've never done before. It's pretty darn reasonable, a
Mhm.
couple $100 here and there." And people are like, let's give it a shot. The brands, they see online what your story is, and you're in charge of that story, which is like the coolest part. You can decide if you're going to be consistent and have good character and show up and follow through on everything you say you will. And brands are paying attention to that. So, I mean, you're in the driver's seat
For
to
sure.
all of this.
It sounds like you're the driving force of connecting with the brands, but now that you've really established a presence and your momentum, are there brands contacting you?
Yes, I was shocked. I did not see that coming, but ever since launching just our pre-sales and getting like a little Instagram up and going, I've had brands reach out and they're like, "This is amazing. I would love to sponsor an athlete." So I've connected people in California, Utah, and North Carolina now with brands that have reached out saying, "We love this idea." And so they're off to the races. I connect them and they are doing their thing. So it's so cool to see that businesses are being proactive and saying, "Hey, we want to get in at this and be viewed as a community partner that
Sure.
supports youth sports in our local market."
I love it. I see a second business for you happening and becoming like a matchmaker of sorts
Oh
for the
my gosh,
brands and
maybe,
the
maybe.
athlete. No, I can see this for sure, especially since you're getting more connected with the families and stuff. I could see brands coming to you and saying, I'm looking for a kid in golf or basketball or gymnastics. And you're like, I have the perfect one for you.
Yeah, maybe my next career, like the mom agent.
Yes, exactly, totally, and that'd be such a unique business to have, but what you're doing already is so unique, and I'm curious if you have any mistakes that you've made along the way or that you see other parents doing with trying to secure sponsorships with, of course, you mentioned, kind of just, like, asking for free stuff and not showing the partnership collaboration, but, are there anything specific that stands out to you that you've done as a mistake or you've seen other parents do?
I wish I started sooner. I used to think that, we couldn't outdo the outreach until he was good enough or until he had enough followers. And, that's just what I'm finding is not the case. It's like just start the outreach now. And it's just so important that people want authenticity, not perfection. So that is what, looking back, I'm like, oh, we should have started it. We should have asked while he was really building his career at the very beginning, because that's a journey that a lot of brands like to be a part of from square
Absolutely.
one. I mean,
Well, and
look at the
especially,
team.
one day when they're super famous and actually do go completely pro, then they can go back and be like, "I've been with this little guy or girl since they were, just starting out before they'd even won any tournament, anything." And to your point, that's pretty valuable too.
Exactly. Somebody said to me, LeBron James was once a kid athlete with a dream. And it's like, it's so true. Imagine if Nike had gotten in with LeBron James
Right?
when he was 10 years old.
Totally.
You just never know. So it's just connecting with the brands that make the most sense, that align with what your journey looks like. And it's a no brainer.
I love that. That's awesome.
But the partnerships that you can make on a local level, they don't care typically that you're not number one in your field, because there's only going to be a very select few of those kids who are. And they want somebody who's a good pillar of the community. They want a positive family because, hello, the parents were the ones, kind of running the show here. So
Absolutely.
they don't want the parents that are screaming at their kids after a loss or doing negative talk about others on the field. I
Right.
had somebody tell me that they follow the parents to the parking lot, a potential sponsor, to see what that family interaction looks like after the game.
Wow.
So, and that's a great lesson to teach your kids too. People are
Absolutely.
always watching. So if you have
Definitely.
bad sportsmanship, if you are doing negative self-talk, if you are using profanity, all those things people are paying attention to. And it's really a reflection of the family.
This episode is proudly sponsored by Shipsticks. Whether you're traveling for a tournament or your next golf getaway, Shipsticks makes it easy to ship your golf clubs ahead of time and travel stress-free. Save 20% on your next shipment with code GMM20. Use the link in the podcast show. Thanks to Shipsticks for supporting the Golf Mom Mindset podcast community and junior golf development. Mandy, and this goes off topic a little bit, but one of my interviews was with a college coach, golf coach, and she says in the recruiting process, and I'm sure this is the case for a lot of sports too, including pickleball, she's like, when I go to watch your child, I've already looked at their stats. I want them. I want them on the team. They qualify. So when I go, I'm actually watching how they interact with their parents, their behavior, how they get along with everyone else. So she's like, it's interesting because a lot of kids, they always kind of freak out. Oh my gosh, a college coach is watching me. And they kind of get really nervous. And she's like, I already want you. How are you behaving? That's what I'm watching. I'm watching if you throw a fit. Again, how you even speak to your mom afterwards. Because,
Exactly.
you know, if you, if you can't fit in our culture, doesn't matter what your rankings are, we don't want you. And I took that away as like just a huge eye opener of, these kids, they need to, if they're already good, now they need to refine this other part. And that starts at a very young age, as you know, being a mom.
Yep. Yep. And that's why it's cool to show, on Instagram, the behind the scenes. What is their reaction leading into a big game? Are they nervous? Are they mentally tough? Do they need to do some meditation? Do they have things they tell themselves? All those things build the character and the story. So it's like document all that.
I
Brands
love
love to
that.
see the real human.
Absolutely.
And hopefully you're doing positive things,
Yeah, that's
to
true.
show
Right.
off. But brands love to see that stuff.
Well, and speaking of that, sounds like you do a really good job, Mandy, with your son and having that positive self-talk. And again, pickleball being such an individual sport, can you talk to me a little bit about like what advice you would give other sports parents, particularly pickleball and golf parents, of how you can pep your kid up and not let them get too much in their head with negative thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. We have a lot of things that we say together as a family, on the way to the tournament. Like, this is going to be a good day. I'm going to have a good time. No matter what the outcome, I'm going to try my best. I'm going to leave knowing I did my best. I'm already, ranked at this. So this is just going to be for fun. We really kind of just reiterate that you enjoy this. No one's forcing you to be here. This is very driven by you, the kid. We're not forcing him to go to these things or go to practice. And just making it a fun experience.
Hmm.
And then afterward, it's like asking questions like, what was your peak of your game and the pit of your game? And then we talk about what was the best part of your playing and what was the worst, and how can we kind of change that for next time so that's not the pit. So, peak and pit on the drive home is huge for us. And I'm always really intentional when I say to him, I don't say, you did an amazing job. I say, I had so much fun watching you.
Love
So I
that.
try and, reframe what I'm telling him, that it's not necessarily based on performance. It's like, I don't care if you win or lose. I had so much fun watching you out there doing what you love, excelling with all your friends. That made my heart feel so happy. So, we talk about a lot of that stuff on the way home, no matter if it's a win or a loss.
I'm curious with your son because you mentioned he did like 3 sports. So what led him to say, I'm gonna pursue pickleball like full time and go at this highly competitive level?
Yeah, he just played at a friend's house one day and he came home and he said, "Hey, I played this new game. It's really fun. It's called pickleball. I'm kind of good at it. I think I'd like to take some lessons." And so we put him in just a local club. And the coach said, he has a really good mindset of being a coachable athlete. So if this is something he really likes, he's good at taking feedback, making the change necessary. And then that just really elevated his game. So he was just good at it. He loved it. The pickleball community, I'm sure, like golf, is very tight. And I know, like you and I, we have only children. And so we're always trying to create that social circle for them and, give them all the opportunities to thrive socially and emotionally because they don't have siblings. And so this pickleball community was just super welcoming. And everyone was kind of in the same boat, as this is a new and up and coming sport. There's not a ton of visibility on it yet. And let's all grow the sport and grow these kids and their friendships and their relationships and their skills all together. And now he has friends across the country, because they're all so spread out, but it's just so fun because they share a love of pickleball. And so it's like they're instant friends. Like, you like pickleball? I like pickleball.
Yeah.
Let's be friends.
Right.
So it's cool.
That's awesome. Well, and I know we talked offline that you and your husband were not pickleball players until really your son got involved. We're in a similar boat, a non-golfer here who's now in this golf world, full steam ahead. So talk to me a little bit about that and that transition from you and your husband to, and it's such a new sport as well that it must be pretty exciting to be a part of this journey of not only your son, but a sport that's so new still in the world of sports.
Yeah, and it's such a social sport. You don't have to be super good at it, and you can still play with people of all levels and all ages. Jay-Z has a lot of friends in their 70s, and
I love
it's
that.
super cool because it's just a really welcoming community. And, when he started getting good at pickleball, my husband and I were like, oh, we should probably start playing this game. And, we're getting better, but I wouldn't say we're good yet, but we enjoy it and we can play with the other parents when we're at tournaments and we
But the kids are
understand all the
probably outdoing you all, right?
yeah, they don't wanna play with us. They're like, "You guys are not good enough."
Yeah. That's how
But
us and
it's
some of the golf parents are. I mean, we don't even attempt because these kids are crushing us.
yeah, but at least we understand the lingo, if they're saying like, "Oh, this dink was too far," and then it's like, "Oh yeah, I know what that means now." So, it's good that it's been fun. It's been a fun journey learning to play, and I always say I'm a social player, I'm not trying to win any awards, but it's just fun.
Well, it sounds like you had to also take a crash course on the lingo in pickleball, which I also had to do with golf because there's all these terms flying around. And it's like, this is another language to a parent that's not familiar. So you've
Yeah.
taken a crash course in this sport, it sounds like.
Yep, and I think the best way to do that is to just get out there and play. You learn by doing, and that's what we've done, and I feel like we have a pretty good understanding now.
Sure, definitely. How do you balance the chaos of youth sports with also kind of building your brand now for your business and also the brand of your son?
I really try and plan ahead. Now that we've kind of mastered getting sponsorships, I can say, okay, next month we have these things that we're going to need to pay for, whether it's lessons, whether it's a tournament, whether it's uniforms, whether it's gear. And so I really plan ahead. And then I kind of work backwards. Okay, next month is going to cost us $2,000. Let's get it sponsored. And then I work backwards, and whether it's $300 or $400 asks to a few local businesses for a one time ask, or it's an ongoing $100 a month. And, I really try and figure out 2 or 3 months ahead of time. And that relieves a lot of the chaos when it comes to planning, the financial chaos. It's not last minute. We're not scrambling. How are we going to pay for this? How are we going to get here? What's the schedule? It really helps to just be proactive as far as scheduling and finances for sure.
Very helpful information because I do feel like many parents, myself included, you're just flying by the seat of your pants with, shoot, we need to register for this. And I think planning out the year is probably a very good strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. And even like with equipment, I kind of figured out, okay, he's going to go through 10 to 12 paddles a year. So when I'm asking for a sponsorship, that's what I'm asking for because I know that's what we're going to be in need of. Same with like, he has 5 travel tournaments this summer. That's going to equal X amount of dollars. So that's what I'm going to ask for. So just figure out kind of what you need first and then break it into different asks.
Have you had a hotel and airline yet sponsor, or is that kind of the next step, do you think?
So those are really hard to get, I will say, because, it's really hard to get to the decision maker at American Airlines who can say yes. So instead, what we do is I will partner with somebody to sponsor the flight. And whether that's $500 or $300, I figure out what that flight is. And then I get a local sponsor for that dollar amount. And then it's straight up dollars, but we say they sponsored the flight.
I see. So I guess in terms of your return for them, would you show on Instagram your son like boarding the flight and saying thanks to our sponsor at Toys R Us or something like that, right? Is that kind of how you give them the value, or like what would be an example of the brand of how you're showcasing the brand?
Yeah, so we had his pediatrician sponsor a flight, and he wore a shirt with their logo to and from the airport, which was part of it. We did a social media shout out when he goes to the doctor. We do a little story in the waiting room and why he loves that place and why it's really great for athletes. And when he does his yearly checkup, we talk about the importance of having your vision checked so he can keep that hand-eye coordination great for pickleball. And so we kind of spelled it out. Here's what we can offer you over the course of, I think we did a 6-month thing with them. and they ended up paying for 2 flights, and he wore the t-shirt, we did the social media. I posted on my social media, my personal social media, about how as a mom, I'm very happy with this, practice, and this is why, and so I kind of talked about him from the parent
Sure.
perspective, whereas Jay-Z talked about it from the patient and the kiddo perspective.
Sure. Well, I love that because you're really giving a brand like a priceless testimonial, right? You're
Yeah.
giving the parent perspective, the child perspective. I mean, from a marketing standpoint, this is honestly, Mandy, genius. I feel like you've cracked the code here.
Easy. I always tell parents, like, they just don't know it's possible. It's like once you know and you have the email templates, that's the easiest thing. You just tweak them a little bit for your ask and your athlete and what you're asking for, and off it goes. You don't even have to like talk to someone in person. But I will say a lot of times you have to follow up because businesses are pitched all day long with solicitations for, school fundraisers, silent auction items, anything. And this is a very different ask that they usually don't get. And so when they see it, they're kind of like, what's this? Just another ask. And then if you follow up 2 or 3 times, they're like, oh, this person is persistent. And this is maybe somebody I'd want to work with because they really want to work with us. And that's a great quality. They're going to show up, they're going to deliver on what they say they're going to do. So if somebody ghosts you, don't take it personally. Follow up, call, leave a message. In the course, I give you the exact message to leave. And then if that doesn't work, walk into the business. Keep I have a little media kit, a 1-page kind of like a resume for Jay-Z. And I will walk into a business and leave that with them and say, this is a follow-up to my email. And I almost always get a call back if I do a walk-in.
Impressive. Well, and speaking of that, you mentioned in your course, you kind of give a template of how to reply back. Walk me through a little bit of what your course is and what parents can learn from it and walk away with if they were to sign up for your course, which I know is launching soon.
Yes, yeah. It's truly from start to finish. So we start about the importance of building your kiddo's brand. And then we talk about how to ask, who to ask. I give you the template for everything. We create that together. Then you do the reach out and then you follow through on it. So it's kind of like a 5-step system. I give you a 20-day checklist of things to do every day to kind of position yourself perfectly after 20 days. And I packaged it all into a 60-minute course. So you will know exactly how to get sponsorships quick and efficient. And that was really important to me because I'm like, we are all sports parents. We don't have time for like hours and hours and hours. We need it quick. We need the information, not sugar coated. And we need the exact templates, the exact social media DMs to send, the exact emails to send if you want cash, if you want gear, if you want a free meal before or after your tournament, if you want a meal for your team. I tell you how to get that for free. I give you everything to make it as easy as possible for you just to plug and send it off.
Amazing, Mandy. Where can parents find this course and connect with you?
Sure. So it's sponsormyathlete.com. That's where the course is. And you can follow me on social media at Carpool to Contracts, where I just provide kind of behind the scenes and fun sports mom updates and just life as a sports parent.
I love that. And that information will be in the show notes so that you can connect with Mandy directly and also register for her course. Mandy, I'm curious with pickleball, have you encountered unsportsmanship like behavior from whether it's the other kids or parents? And if so, how have you handled that?
Yeah, we see it at every tournament, unfortunately. They have started passing out a sportsmanship award at most tournaments we go to, which I love that because, the kids are always vying to get that award. I really think they should give a parent sportsmanship award, which has not happened yet.
Hmm.
But yeah, we've seen it with kids and the parents. And it's really unfortunate, but I also use it as a lesson. We were just at a tournament and I saw a parent throw the child's bag at the child for losing. And I was like horrified. But it was, in my brain, I thought, okay, we're going to use this as a teaching opportunity to Jay Z and say, we would never do that behavior. I hope you would never do that behavior to someone else. And we talked about it and how that wasn't right. So, yes, we're exposed to it. Yes, we see it, but we try and recognize how that's not how our family operates. And Jay Z is very aware that if he ever acted like that, that would be the end of pickleball. You
Yeah.
know, that's not acceptable from parents, it's not acceptable
Mhm.
from kids.
Yeah.
And if he wants to keep doing what he's doing, we expect good sportsmanship, congratulating the other player, win, loss, going over to them if they're upset, saying you played great. And we put a huge emphasis on leading by example. So if, we're not going to freak out, he better not freak out.
Right. Well, and
Yeah.
again, I think that you're creating a really good family dynamic that brands would want to work with because now you're representing more than just even your kid, you're representing these brands. And I find that very admirable.
Well, thank you. You know what? Speaking of brands at tournaments, I forgot to mention this. That's one of the best places to find brands to approach is see who's sponsoring all the sports in your neighborhood. Drive by your local high school and see the banners on the football field because they're oftentimes local parents that are already invested in the youth sports community and they're great people to ask. Or if you're at a tournament and they have sponsor booths, in golf, I'm sure people sponsor different holes and like those people are already investing marketing dollars into getting visibility in the golf or pickleball community. Those are perfect asks. So I always have Jay-Z go up to all those vendors, introduce himself, get a sample, try whatever they're selling. Maybe we'll tape like a little fun behind the scenes content. We were just at a tournament and Toys R Us was the presenting sponsor. So he went up and taped some content with Jeffrey, their, mascot, and used all the different toys as a pickleball paddle and rated them. And then Toys R Us reposted it. And that's a huge national brand. And
That's
that was our
awesome.
foot in the door, to say, hey, we've worked with you once. Let's expand this partnership. Just keep your eyes open. Who's sponsoring? And just make those connections, get that relationship going.
Well, Mandy, this has been such an insightful conversation, and I'm walking away with so many good little nuggets. I can't wait to take your course. And I feel like so many parents in all sports will find such value in this podcast and what you're offering. So, thank you so much for being here, sharing your journey, your business, your life with your son. For everyone who has listened, please like and share this podcast with a fellow sports parent. This is definitely something that, all sports parents need to hear and listen. So thank you for being here, Mandy.
Thank you so much. This was fun.